Hello, I'm mischievous Mark Chinacchio, and I own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, Amazing Fantasy number 15, and all of the annuals, which I say do not count. And I'm going to probably just put this out there, Dan, because I know you were at a con this weekend that I wasn't able to attend, but everything that you picked up this weekend doesn't count either. So I'm just preemptively. So there you go.
Well, I'm going to agree with that because I picked up a bunch of just crap Spider-Man books, and this is how you know that the addiction is burning like in my blood. Spider-Man Quality of Life, a book I don't think you knew about until the very second I uttered it. A CGI rendered a book with a decent story from Greg Rucka, but man, the ugliest comic maybe I've ever seen, and exactly the antithesis of why I got into comic art. But nevertheless, I must own them all, including the annuals, because I'm Dapper Dan Gavosden, and I too own every issue of Amazing Spider-Man, including all of the absolute crap ephemera of Spider-Man history.
The dregs of comics.
I mean, I'm telling you what, the 90s, some crazy comics coming out then, and all of the annuals, which I say definitely count. But for me, Amazing Fantasy 15 remains a fantasy. But I mean, look, Spider-Man Quality of Life, a pretty solid stand-in.
All right. Well, doesn't count though, Dan. Welcome to the Amazing Spider Talk, the show where two fans and collectors uncover the strange, fun, and fascinating history of the Spider-Man comic universe, including the quality of life of Spider-Man, apparently. Thanks for joining us for this review episode of Amazing Spider-Man Volume 7.
Today on the show, Mark and I are going to be discussing Amazing Spider-Man Volume 7, number 14, which is Legacy Issue 978. We got 22 issues to go to 1,000. This issue is written by Joe Kelly. The cover features artwork by Patrick Gleason and Marcio Menyz. Nice to see them back. The interiors feature pencils by Ed McGuinness with Todd Nauck, inks by Mark Farmer, Wade Von Grawbadger, who continues to have the coolest name. I got to meet him at Baltimore Comic-Con this past week and told him, I think you have the coolest last name. I don't think he really understood where I was coming from, but it remains true. Ed McGuinness also did inks, and Todd Nauck. Colors by Marcio Menyz with Erick Arciniega, and of course, letters by VC's Joe Caramagna, runner-up for coolest last name. This issue was first released on October 15th, 2025. Mark, why don't you hit us with a recap of the events of Amazing Spider-Man Volume 7, number 14, Legacy 978.
Well, this issue opens with Norman Osborn sitting by a fire, recapping his confrontation with the Spider People. Norman concedes his time as Spider-Man has been a failure. The Spiders don't want him doing it anymore, and he's not doing a good job of protecting Peter's dream. We then flash over to the meatpacking district, where Frankenstein's monster and Chasm are beating up some thugs in suits, but this hasn't suddenly become a monster book because it's actually Hallows Eve as the monster, and she's sassing Ben about his plans with other women, like maybe taking someone out to Mendy's for soup and a sandwich. It counts as a meal. Anyway, she's clearly jealous of all of his cosplaying as Peter, including him hanging out with his hot boss. And that brings us Ben at a cute brunch spot with Dr. O.M. She's about to tell Ben about the reason she's been distracted and absent, and it has to do with her son. But before we get the reveal, Norman Osborn shows up, and we get two sets of icy word balloons from OM and Ben, courtesy of Joe Caramagna with a great last name. Dr. OM doesn't appreciate Norman harassing his former employee and her current one, alpha male egotist that he is. Norman whispers a threat to Ben, and then Ben puts it together that Norman is fake Spider-Man. That brings another set of threats from Dr. OM to Norman about harassing her employee. Before he leaves, though, Norman shares a moment of vulnerability with Myra, I'm going to get that name wrong, Myra OM, because I don't remember her full last name, telling her he's had issues with his son, Harry, as well. I mean, those issues include selling his soul and, him being a clone and dying and faking the reappearance of Norman's fake progeny. We won't get into it, Dan, unless we want you to get the conspiracy board back up, right? On that cue, we revisit the previous issue's cliffhanging, mysterious Spider Slayer saying, Sic Semper Monstrum, which means, Dan?
Death to monsters.
All right.
And also the Doctor's last name is Osmani Milton.
Osmani Milton. I do have it later in the thing, in the recap here, Dan, but, thanks for exposing my stupidity. It then breaks through the wall. This is the Spider Slayer, not my stupidity. Kool-Aid Man style. Ooh, yeah. Looking for Norman. But before we get more there, we flash over to Peter's apartment, and Aunt May shows up with a letter for him. When an unusually attractive blonde woman answers the door, she lets May know that Peter talks about her all the time, but May is just there to let him know that his cousin, Gregory Riley, has passed away before she coldly walks away. I love Cousin Gregory. You can't make a Tomlet without breaking a few Gregs, right? Dan, do you know what I'm talking about, or is that off your pop culture radar?
I hurt right now, but it is also off my pop culture radar.
Okay, Succession, Dan. It's a good show. You should watch it.
Oh, I have watched that show. I don't know why I forgot about that particular joke.
Okay, anyway, the blonde takes off the mask to reveal that she's actually Janine, and she adds May's note to a pile of other ones for Peter. It's back to the brunch spot, and Norman runs away, tears open his shirt Superman style, and gets into his Spider-Man gear. The Spider Slayer wants to know what Dr. Osmani Milton's association with Norman is, but she doesn't get an answer before the greatest superhero we've ever been introduced to multiple times appears. It's Kintsugi, Sans captain, because maybe that way someone will remember him, shows up with a shield. But before he can take on the Spider Slayer, Spider-Man shows up as Norman, comments to himself that fighting in broad daylight like this makes him feel more exposed than beating the crap out of people at night. He gets tossed around by the Spider Slayer, and that brings us back to Brian and Astrid, as Brian bemoans the lack of progress with his mushies and Peter's rapid rise in the ranks. Astrid lets Brian know that Peter is more driven than he is. Cue some ominous foreshadowing as Brian considers rushing scientific progress. Oh, that won't come back to bite anyone in the butt. Back to the Norman Slayer fight, and surprisingly, the Spider Slayer wants nothing to do with Spider-Man or Kintsugi. Regardless, the Spider Slayer has Spidey in a vice grip and looks to be squeezing the life out of him before he gets saved by Kintsugi. Norman uses the shield to take out the Spider Slayer, earning the admiration of the nearby crowd, everyone except Ben. Kintsugi introduces himself to Norman one more time in case anyone forget. I guess we all keep forgetting. We always forget about Kintsugi. Norman pulls the "you're a child and this stuff is dangerous" line, and like that stopped the Spider Office over the past few years. But before we leave, a fist punches a screen as we observe Norman Osborn from afar. No, it's not Dan reacting to a too long recap. Instead, it belongs to Electo. Not Electro, Electo, who is coordinating the attack on Osborn. The group of druids seems dejected until old friend Roderick Kingsley shows up, promising more expertise to help them. Wait, wasn't this the same cliffhanger from 2 weeks ago? We'll find out, or 2 issues ago, I guess, right? Because 2 weeks ago would have been, Spider-Man's issue.
Yes, that's right. That's fair. Yeah.
All right.
I'll admit, I added that last bit on there and gave Mark an incorrect setup. So,
I would never make a mistake like that in my recap. I just,
it's never happened before.
I just have incorrect pronouns and other fun things in my recaps usually, but that's okay. We made it. we made it.
Okay. It's a lot of plot spelled out there in that recap. And, I think just jumping right into my kind of overall thoughts about this issue is like, this is an issue where a lot of things like happen. There's a lot of scenes that are moving in between, but very little actually moves forward in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
And I found this issue particularly frustrating and maybe my least favorite of the run so far, because it kind of dampened my enthusiasm for almost every plot that is like playing out in it, because we're still at the beginning and it already feels like it's treading water. Like there's just not enough meat on the bone here, or that like mysteries are being withheld from us just to prolong us getting core fundamental information that we kind of need to invest in the stories. And so I think this is a totally fine average issue of Amazing Spider-Man, but it kind of underlines a sort of like a creeping dread that I have, like that despite all the things going on, like why can't we progress a little bit more?
Yeah, no, I share in that. I mean, this is like the antithesis of the comic we reviewed 2 weeks ago, where there actually wasn't a ton of plot in that comic, but it was such a wonderful character study. It just felt so rich in the text, and there was just so much for us to talk about. Whereas with this was an incredibly busy comic. It actually reminded me a lot of like a Dan Slott era Spider-Man comic, where it was just like, okay, then we're going here, and then we're doing this, and now we're doing this. But like you said, when you got to the end of the story, it was kind of like we're repeating beats, we're withholding actual reveals. We really don't know, outside of maybe Norman, what any of these characters are really thinking and doing, like what's motivating them. Why are these decisions important to them? And that's kind of frustrating because, again, it's frustrating, period. But it's, I think, extra frustrating because, we know we've gotten better very recently, and we know we can do better here. You know what I mean? And this is, in the preamble to our last episode, Dan, I had kind of said after that last issue, I was like, oh, I think I'm far more interested in Peter's like side of the story right now than I am with Norman and Ben. And again, we got some decent stuff with Norman here, but like the Ben stuff, I think it's just a kind of a wash right now. And this comic, not only did it not change that opinion, but it kind of further cemented it in a way where I'm like, all right, we got to like get to the fireworks factory with this other side of the story, because I'm really starting to lose interest in it fast.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those classic. I mean, last issue we talked about, like, that's a issue of Spider-Man that's about something much bigger than Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right? As told through the lens of Spider-Man. This is one of those comics that's a Spider-Man comic that's all about Spider-Man. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just about the lore of Spider-Man. Maybe there's some larger themes that you could find here and there, but it's really about like, okay, like we're playing within this wheelhouse. And frankly, it's the kind of stuff that I think the book has been kind of overly obsessed with over the past decade, of just not aspiring to be much greater than a Spider-Man comic. And look, this is a book that, like, Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man has made its bread and butter off of being about its characters, for a very long time, with a few stories here and there that like punch above and get to real human stuff, and when it's at its best, it's doing both simultaneously, right? It is engaging in the world of Spider-Man characters and engaging in human foibles that we can relate to, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's some of that here. I do think Norman has a somewhat interesting arc within this individual story, but it's just so interrupted by all of the other mechanics that have to play out here that, like you said, remain kind of indecipherable, that take away from that being a richer emotional journey for that character. And to your point about who you're more interested in, look, I don't even know that I necessarily fully know what the story with Peter is in space quite yet. I mean, there is that interesting foible, like idea about why he doesn't want to return home, and understanding what strength is, and the sort of like returning people to their homes. That's all interesting stuff. I think Norman right now is the most interesting character in this title. Like there's just so much rich stuff to go on there. And we get a little bit of it here, but it's just not quite as full of a meal character-wise as what we got in the past 2 issues of this title. But yeah, again, this is one of those micro update check-in stories, the Dan Slott era. I think the Zeb Wells era was full of these. And I think the art here also kind of drags the title down a little bit. Not that any of it's like objectively bad, but it's also all over the place, just like the plotting is.
Yeah. I mean, I think like as soon as you see like, and this is not a criticism of their artwork per se, but it's like I pick up the comic and I see Ed McGuinness and Todd Nauck, and that like to me like makes me think, okay, these are fill-in artists.
Yeah.
Lots of inkers.
4 inkers. Yeah.
Reminiscent of the Nick Spencer run when it was like 37 artists on one story. You have some insight into what might be going on here, though, Dan, right?
Yeah. At Baltimore Comic-Con, Scott Hanna was there. And if you don't know, Scott Hanna is like typically or almost always John Romita Jr.'s inker in this sort of modern era, unless it's like Klaus Janson or something, right? And Scott, I talked to him. I said, like, hey, they came out and said that, J.R.J.R. would be handling all of the Earthbound stuff, while Pepe Larraz would be doing the Spacebound stuff. And he said, yeah, that was the intention, but he didn't get into the details of it, but that John Romita Jr. was like left to go to Europe on like family trips or something like that, and that it had kind of sidelined their process, and that they had recently kind of gotten back into it, and that we could expect them to be taking on more complete arcs moving forward, but that there was some unplanned thing that kind of derailed that process. So I think we're seeing that play out here. Like, shade to Ed McGuinness, who I think has proven himself maybe while not my favorite style, has proven himself, worthy of being a solo artist on Amazing Spider-Man. It wasn't what we were promised initially. Right. And so, I thank Scott Hanna for kind of divulging that to me at Baltimore Comic-Con. And, again, we get the books that we get, but it makes sense, like, why something would feel so different than what we originally promised.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not a knock against the artists themselves, but it's like when you have this many credits on something, and like we've seen it play out before in recent history, like Ed McGuinness and Todd Nauck are more or generally like, they're the gap fillers on this book. So like like you said, there's clearly, going back to my original point about like which story is more enticing to me at the moment. I mean, like there's and granted this could all change on a dime, but I don't think there's any reason to believe it will. But like there's a through line creatively with the space stuff right now, because we're telling a specific story. We have a consistent artist working on it. I mean, the fact that it's Pepe Larraz certainly doesn't hurt. But
I'm about to burst that bubble because the next issue is not Pepe Larraz.
All right, well there you go. So we'll see how that holds up. I mean, it's an interesting thing. When we had our Joe Kelly interview, we really didn't ask him about the schedule, but like here we go again, you know what I mean? Like even treating it as a monthly book in terms of each story, it just doesn't seem to be able to, can't seem to keep a consistent art style going, issued, story to story, which is frustrating. But this is Spider-Man in this era right now, so there you go.
Yeah, and I think Pepe Larraz, probably at the stage that he's at with the level of detail he's doing, is probably not able to turn them out month to month. I'm assuming, like, the books are just too detailed. I don't think you get that level of artwork. As John Romita Jr. has implied, like, his style became less detailed because he was doing Deadline style. I don't think you get a Pepe Larraz doing what he's doing on a Deadline style. And
no.
So then I guess you pick and choose, is it worth it to wait? And frankly, yes, I think each of those issues has been so stunning that like, I'd rather him really hit a home run than, do like a slightly lesser work more frequently. I have beat up on Todd Nauck enough over the years. Again, nice guy. Art is consistent. I just find it very boring, and I think that is true here. It's just never surprises me, and it covers the scenes well. But when art isn't like surprising me, it gets boring. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of where I'm at with him as an artist.
There you go. All right. Well, you indicated earlier that you're excited by this Norman Osborn story. And I am too, to a degree, but I want to hear a little bit more from you, Dan, on this. What is drawing you in so much with Norman?
Well, I mean, it's the kind of classic. I mean, I was just saying about the art, not like, if I can guess what it's going to look like, it gets boring very quickly. When I've seen all of the cards you have to play, it's not a very exciting game of poker, right? I feel like Norman Osborn is kind of the opposite. Like even just the opening of this issue where he goes, the kids don't want me to be Spider-Man and I'm messing this up. I'm done being Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Now, okay, maybe not the most thorough follow through on that, given that he goes out on a mission to meet up with Ben and is wearing his Spider-Man costume underneath. So he truly hasn't given up. Although he does declare like, hey, if I'm going to stop being Spider-Man, Ben is going to stop being Spider-Man too. And I would understand why he might want to, I guess, bring some sort of disguise along with him. Although I don't know what happened to all of his Gold Goblin stuff. But I don't know where this story is going. I'd like to think that I know that it's going towards Norman's redemption, but even this issue, I think, kind of throws a wrench in that, as I'm sure we'll discuss. And I think not only is Kelly's writing of Norman really exciting, the sort of journalizing, of it, and the way that he really systematically breaks down Norman's thought process, which is very different than Peter's. It's like very logical and very precise and with no sense of humor.
Yeah.
It's an exciting character to read, and I don't know where it's going, and that keeps me really on the hook.
Yeah, I see what you're saying with a lot of that. I mean, like, I don't know if I'm as excited by it. I think I'm still intrigued by it, but like I do feel this issue particularly, we're still kind of tracing the same stuff with Norman. I mean, like, we haven't really gotten like he kind of concedes early, like I shouldn't be doing this, and then he doesn't. So like, okay. But like the scene that kind of like really kind of caught me a little bit in a way where I was just like, am I really intrigued by this? Was when he is fighting the Spider Slayer and talking about like the difference between night and day. And I'm like, maybe if there was some setup earlier in this arc of like, I only do this at night, I would like be more, but like we haven't, I mean, unless I missed something, like we really haven't.
It is there, but it's not leaned heavily into. He does talk about how he is only doing it at night and he doesn't want to let people like walk away without like injuries.
Right.
So like there is a slight shift here, but I agree with you overall in terms of like how much time that has been established for.
Yeah.
And like, one time is not a pattern. Like, you know what I mean? And that's true for like almost every story that is touched on in this particular issue. And we'll get into it, especially as we get to like some of the like other subplots. I think there's a lot of like kind of cheats to the end in this issue. And the Norman one works best for me, but I can understand where it might not for you.
Yeah, I guess then my case, okay, fine, you do it once and you're right, it's not a pattern, but like if you really want to reinforce it, then then I would say I would want to see more reluctance here. And it's kind of, like you said, he has his Spider-Man costume on underneath in a cafe where he's meeting someone during the day. You know what I mean? So like, it wasn't like, if this is truly a point of contention and struggle for him, I think it could have been conveyed differently, the journey into him being Spider-Man to fight the Spider Slayer. I did like him kind of getting the adulation though. Like that's the thing. Like I'm not like totally bailing on this storyline because like I think there's still interesting stuff to be mined, and with someone like Norman who clearly has power and obsession issues. Like how does where does he go from here now that it's not even just that he is quote unquote living Peter's dream, but like he's getting well, I mean, is Spider-Man adulated? I mean, it depends on, I guess, who's writing him in the moment. I mean, like it's not the Ditko Stan Lee era anymore. So I guess he gets adulated more than he doesn't now. I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like it's an interesting kind of, I kind of want to see like how does Norman cope with that drug, that hit, that dopamine from saving the day and like having everyone cheer for him except for Ben. But yeah, like we've seen the confrontation with Ben Reilly before. I got to be honest, like and like this is just my old man memory acting up, but I was like, wait, Ben Reilly didn't know he was I guess. Yeah, I guess we didn't firmly establish that like Ben didn't know, but like I don't know, like I guess like that reveal didn't like, oh, now it's because it's still like, well, now what? So what? Like there's a lot of so what, I guess, is like kind of at the core of this issue. It's like, okay, we have these things, Aunt May and the letters, Ben and this, Brian and Astrid, and it's kind of like, okay, so what's the so what here? You know what I mean? Like and that kind of goes back to what we were saying in our intro.
Well, I also think it's the repeated beats, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like yes, like the moment where we learned that Norman Osborn is Spider-Man was private for us, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it doesn't make sense that the other Spider people, who we just discovered that Norman is Spider-Man, would tell Ben. Because
right.
Ben's on the outs, right?
Sure.
And so there is like Ed McGuinness does visually punctuate that moment. I think for me, the trip up there was just the language that Joe Kelly used, where he says like, "You're fake Spider-Man." I think is a little bit like a weirdly written line for Ben to say aloud, and I had to read it twice just to be like connect what the implication of that was. Not that it's that big a leap, but it was just weirdly phrased within a sentence. And now I'm getting into like, picking apart grammar and all that stuff. But I think that stuff kind of like works for me. But the promise is like, oh, like Ben is going to want to stop Norman from being fake Spider-Man, but we already got that clash on the rooftop. So
I guess like, that's what it is. We had the confrontation. So now what? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And like, look, like we go back to the Clone Saga, like where that confrontation played out on a weekly basis for years. You know what I mean? Over who is Spider-Man or whatever. I don't think we're going to get anything like that. So I'm fine with like repeating it maybe one more time in a more kind of sort of everybody knows who's who before the engagement starts, and we can get into maybe some of the deep meat of this. Like I like the bit where Norman is just starting like, oh yeah, we're like Peter and I are old friends, and Ben's like, we're anything but, which is to say like, I'm not Peter Parker. I'm not giving you another chance.
Yeah.
You've killed me and I tried to kill you, like we don't have that relationship. As for the adoration thing, I think it's still a little too muddled to truly understand where we're supposed to kind of be at with Norman, because there's the bit with him like leaping over the Spider Slayer and he talks about being in the daylight and he's like, it feels like being a hero, but then that sort of evolves into like, hey, like I'm not a good person, but here now I feel like I am. And I do think there is like an interesting thing where he says like, and it's terrifying and I love it. And I think what we're really getting at here, and has been what Kelly has been getting at, is that Norman feels like his legacy is not worth saving. So he's going to try to preserve Spider-Man's legacy. But now I think this final moment in this issue, if I had to sort of like chart something before it plays out, is like, this is the real big first domino to kind of fall in a sort of downfall of Norman, or whatever he's working through. Because if there's one thing we really know about Norman, even beyond his evilness, is that he has narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, hey, if I can't regain my legacy, I'll try to save Peter's.
Right.
But now he's living it.
Yeah.
So can he become Spider-Man and want that legacy purely for himself?
Sure.
Will he let Peter come back and take that back if it feels more comfortable as a glove on Norman? And I could very well see the guy that once tried to dress up Peter as the Goblin to keep his own legacy going, saying, actually, I'm going to take your legacy and make it so that you don't get to have it back. Do I want that? I'm very much in the camp of like, hey, I want Norman to like get a win so that Spider-Man can get a win and prove that his, mantra like lives true. But I could also see a moment like this at the end of this comic signaling, oh, Norman is truly like his like feint at the beginning of saying, I'm not going to be Spider-Man anymore. We've lost that moment in the wind. And now that he's got the taste of adulation and, he's not going to want to let that go.
Yeah. Well, kind of on that note then, what do you have to say about our friend's Sic Semper Monstrum here? Because I mean, I don't know. This whole subplot is kind of losing me too, if I'm being honest with you.
I agree. I guess it's like hooded cabal. Like once you've seen one, you've seen them all kind of thing. And it's just kind of waiting for the hoods to be pulled back and be revealed. And maybe I've just gotten tired of like mysteries in these books just because how many can you have going simultaneously and just kind of want to know. And it really just comes down to, okay, whenever Joe wants to pull that trigger, we're going to figure this out. I do think on that front, we do get a few clues here. So I do appreciate that we are moving forward in some way. It's not just, to reference our interview with Joe Kelly, he's like, I like sort of like giving more information that then poses new questions. And so I do feel like there's a meaningful step forward here and that the character is working through it, not just the audience. Like
right.
Norman says like, like this isn't a professional rival because they want to make a messy execution of me and associate my name with chaos. That doesn't necessarily make sense to me.
Right.
I don't know why that eliminates a professional rival. Like if I was a professional rival and I could associate my, business rivalry, like the rival with chaos, I feel like that would be exclusively good for business.
It's just like you making my collection chaos or something. Like,
right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I can undermine any element of your collecting process, then I can win on the annuals front. I didn't understand that thinking, but if it makes sense to Norman, I guess I'm willing to go with it to some degree. At least it makes sense to him. We see them kind of interrogating people during the fight about like, hey, what's your relationship to Norman? To kind of like, I guess, get some leverage and also to like, it's curious that they want to minimize damage.
Yeah.
Which I guess kind of goes against the messy thing, but it's, I guess, a controlled messiness. It's like, it's all about sort of a war of visuals, so to speak. And then back to that like Sic Semper Monstrum, even when they're talking about like Norman indirectly, they say like, we're not monsters. So and it's bolded, which makes me think that there's something really important about that monster, like use of that word in association with Norman and as not an association with these people. Which like, again, like, which makes me think like, oh, this person like really has a complex about being perceived as a monster, which makes me think it's someone that is monstrous looking or in form in some way. Cause like, why would you protest that much? Like, it's the whole like, right-wing congressman being anti-gay while secretly being closeted kind of thing.
Right. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. No, there's nothing wrong with that. We get for certain that this is a we, not a singular foe that's coming after him. And I must admit on this note, Mark, as much as you roll your eyes, I got so many messages about my Scryers rant.
Sure, yes. I saw them, Dan. Yeah, okay.
I'm more than usual, and I appreciate it for people who enjoyed that. People were saying, oh, yeah, like I liked getting like a lore dump like that just because I would never be able to like look up all that information and digest it in that way. And I'll be honest, like I do that on the show every now and again. I don't like doing it because I know that it's deeply boring podcasting because it's just me talking about the ins and outs of something totally trivial and nonsense. And I appreciate that you like it, but I am not going to make that a formal part of the show, as some people have requested.
No,
except for when I think it's kind of appropriate, because I think the Scryers are truly like buried content, and so giving people an in, I hope, was helpful. But I don't want to make that a regular thing.
Remember, folks, this podcast is half mine too. We're not doing that.
Yeah, if you want Mark to quit the show, then make that the episode.
There you go.
Dan pulling a Scryers rant,
and then you would have a rotating guest. You'll be like the anchors on a fill-in issue.
Yeah, and to the point about the Scryers, I'm kind of moving away from that theory because I don't feel like the Scryers would call Norman evil incarnate, murderer, and manipulator, and insane, because they're a criminal organization. Like manipulation is kind of what they do,
right?
You know, so like, and those words are very like particularly, like chosen, which gets me to thinking that it's like something like someone who really suffered at the hands of, like Norman, which draws me towards your sort of like Mendel Stroms,
right?
Of the world, a sort of like maybe not a business rival, but someone that like worked for him and was screwed over in a deal, and or like a group of people that he screwed over,
right?
But then I don't know who that would be other than maybe the Scryers, you know. So I don't know. My guess is as good as anybody. But I'm also like kind of losing this. And honestly, I thought the cliffhanger here was really quite boring, given that like, okay, Kingsley's going to get involved now and maybe upgrade the Hobgoblin. Okay, cool. Show me that when that happens. I thought he just got upgraded with the wings already anyway.
Yeah.
But like that was the big cliffhanger of the 2 issues ago, was like, okay, Kingsley's on this team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some of the other character moments.
Yeah, well, why don't you talk about Ben Reilly, because I know you're frustrated with this character.
Well, look, I don't even remember the last time we got a story where I wasn't frustrated with Ben Reilly, and you know, we're how many
maybe the opening of Beyond,
maybe. But you know, we're you know what, 4 now installments of this storyline dealing with Ben into this, and like, you know, like, okay, he's clearly trying to do something with Peter's life, but we just don't know what, and he's being cagey about it, and he's like, just a little bit longer, like, you know, like we're withholding, you know, it's this old, you know, chestnut, we're withholding information. You know, the creators clearly know what the end game is, but instead of telling a satisfying story in a way that like peels back at a reasonable rate, we're intentionally withholding details for the air of mystery. And then like we have this whole subplot with Hallows Eve with Janine, and like she's like jealous with him, and I'm like and it's very clear that she's not on board with this plan, but we don't know what the plan is. I don't know if she even knows what the plan is, so it's just like, what are we doing with these characters? Like Ben is muddled enough as it is, and I actually felt like Janine was someone that they were doing a pretty good job with it, you know, with her own solo miniseries and things like that. but like I think she's a mess in this comic too. Like they're both just kind of like messy and not making sense and doing weird character things to create drama, but like I don't know where they're trying to go with it, and I don't know if I even care at this point.
Yeah, and for me, like I'm confused about like where I need to like each information beat that I get, like how I'm supposed to sort of like what column I'm putting it in, so to speak. You know, like there's this implication of like that he is getting kind of caught up in the role of being Peter.
Yes.
You know, that like Janine is kind of pushing back on. You know, but like the question I ask is like, okay, well, like there's a suggestion that like if he's able to finish this science thing. And in addition to them like busting up that casino, they're making enough money that they can like flee New York and pursue what Janine clearly wants, which is to live a life free of all this stuff,
Right.
and just get to like, be herself without the police chasing after her and superheroes being, a part of their life, which I think is at least consistent with her character, dating all the way back to her first introduction. Like. That I understand. I understand her motivations and being frustrated that she can't just go and do that now because they have enough money for it. So there's something else that's keeping Ben back. And that's where the confusion comes in, because you could read this all as just, you know what the thing that's keeping Ben back is? He's enjoying being Peter more than he realized. And he's just delaying it because he wants to finish the science project, because that element of his life is actually becoming really pleasurable for him.
Right.
Right. And like that would make sense, right? This guy lost all of his memories, but then suddenly back in the role of Peter Parker, he finds that like actually this is the life that he would have gone down anyway, and that would be the path he pursued. I would understand that story, but I'm not certain that that is actually what's going on here, because it seems to be implying that like there was a reason he took on that role beyond just wanting to finding an opening in Peter's life, and is kind of having both those things happening at the same time. He happens to be enjoying this, but he has some greater thing he's trying to achieve. Well, I guess they could just end this by just saying, actually, no, there was no greater thing. He just found himself enjoying that role.
I guess that's my other thing too, Dan, is like, I'm going way back to the Zeb Wells run, right, where Ben was like, he basically fired a warning shot at Peter at one point where he was like, the next time I'm back, I'm coming for your life, kind of a thing. And like, and that, so when we were going into this story, my thing was like, okay, is Ben the mastermind behind this? Is like, did he coordinate with Hellgate and put, to send Peter into this like void of space or something like that? But like the way this is playing out right now, it just seems like he's being opportunistic. Like he saw an opportunity to assume his life because he was off the board, and now he doesn't like really know what to do with it. And I'm not saying that I prefer one or the other, but like the writing hasn't been that clear in terms of where we're actually going with this. And like, if we then revert back to Ben being kind of a sinister mastermind behind, because that's the thing too. I'm like, is Ben actually bad in this book? Because I don't know.
I never considered the whole, like, is he like a sinister mastermind with Hellgate? The two options I always considered, although I think that's a totally valid option. Like we don't know anything about Hellgate. Who knows? Maybe he's like related to someone in Limbo that like Ben met in his time in prison there. I mean, like it could be anything, right?
Sure, right.
The thing I always kind of like chalked up was, one, he's being opportunistic, or two, because remember at the end of the Wells run, he didn't tell Peter, I'm coming for you. He said, Peter, go live your life. I don't want anything to do with it. So Peter thinks that they're on good terms, you know, at this point. So like, the question Black Cat asked him was, did Peter ask you to fill in for him in the case that he suddenly disappears? Right. So like that's another option, is he's doing this as a quote unquote favor to Peter, and then taking advantage on top of it. Or Peter doesn't know anything about what Ben's motives are, and Ben is just being purely opportunistic,
Right.
Yeah.
I guess that's it's very, very, very unclear. And I mean, like we've been saying
intentionally.
Yeah. Right. But like, I think we're at the point, again, like I feel like we say this a lot, in the modern era of Amazing Spider-Man. This isn't like me being impatient as a reader. This is me, like, I think critically, we're surpassing the point where we need more information. I think that's the bottom line. It's like we're like, this isn't fun. It's not fun trying to guess these things that, you know, 4, 5, 6 installments later, we're still kind of guessing the same things. You know what I mean? Like it's you know, we can't necessarily, like you said, like you didn't even consider could Ben have been, and like that was honestly where I went to first when this all happened, and there's no reason for me to necessarily check that box off yet. Like, oh, it can't be that, can't be this, because like we're not revealing anything at an appropriate pace right now. So it's just, yeah, I don't know.
I think it's you know, whatever the answer ends up being, I think the bigger problem is also like how it's being told to us, because like it's being told to us.
Right.
We're not seeing it play out. Like if we were watching, I mean, we've seen some scenes of Ben at Rand, you know, but if we were watching like him step into this role, whatever his motives are, and then, you know, destroying Peter's life one step at a time and watching the choices that he's making play out in real time, you know, and we're seeing some of that, like Aunt May showing up there and being like torn away. But like, there's all these kind of gaps that would be better seen playing out before our eyes and watching the choices being made rather than being told that they had happened, you know, in a sort of oblique way. So yeah, it's not awful, but it's frustrating and unclear and not clean in a way that doesn't invite you into the comic. It pushes you away from engaging emotionally with what's happening on the page.
Yeah. All right, let's speed around through some of these other character beats here. We got a very frustrating scene with Dr. OM and Ben at the cafe where she's like, I'm going to tell you my secret. And then, no, it's all interrupted. And, you know, like, I don't know.
It's a classic trope.
I don't like that trope at all.
No, I don't like the trope either. And what makes it different here, you know, in terms of the trope, like sometimes it can be sort of like ironic where like, I'm about to tell you all of my secrets. And then the person gets interrupted by something that like has been set up.
Right.
Like, and is core to their character that makes it ironic. Here, it just feels artificial because like there's no real connection between I'm going to tell you my secret and a giant robot blasting through the wall.
Right.
You know, like it just feels like the writer did that, for the scene. Now, I think there's some other interesting things that play out because of it, but I don't know, man. And also, like, I'm going to tell you my secret. This is a secret for the readers. Like,
right.
Norman's not curious, or Peter's not necessarily. I mean, I guess maybe he could be because she keeps running out from work. You know?
Right.
So I take it back, but I don't know. It's frustrating for the reader, I think, who just wants to know what's going on. And you could argue that's a good way to keep you on the hook, but it just feels so artificial to be like, now is the time, and then no.
Well, right. But that's the thing. Like, this. Are we really like not to
no?
Be, like, do we really care about what's like? This was kind of introduced as a throwaway, like, oh, I have personal matters, and like I was just, I think I in my recap that episode made like, I don't know, I feel like I made like a probably borderline crude joke about it, or maybe I didn't, but we went there. I don't know, but I'm just like, okay. So
it's only essential to people like us that take every single line in a Spider-Man comic as a potential lead to a mystery.
Right. But like, even then, like, I was just kind of like, what could this possibly be that's like really matters? You know what I mean? Like it's the head of this lab that he's working at, but he's not even working at it anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and we, whatever. And then like, kind of like, I appreciated like the vulnerability with Norman, and like, oh, I had a son who I had a bad relationship with too, and look what, like, hug your kids, people. I don't know. It felt very trite, and like,
Yeah.
everything about this is a cliche is the problem. You know what I mean? Like a trope, a cliche, whatever you want to say. Like, the whole thing getting interrupted. I have this secret, but no one knows about it. And like, does the secret actually matter? And then whatever. I just like, let's move on. Captain Kitsugi. Who's this? Who is Captain Kitsugi, Dan?
Like let's put a trope on a trope, or like a thing I'm not interested in layered on top of another thing that I'm not interested in.
Right.
We have known that Dr. OM was dealing with something with her stepdaughter, right?
Right.
And now she says, "Oh no, actually, the problem is with my son."
Right.
And I don't know, Mark, if your brain went this direction, but like to me, it was like bing, bing, bing.
Oh.
Immediately, Captain Kintsugi is her son.
Yeah.
And that's why he's there. And, that's why he's getting expelled from school, as it's suggested here, is he's dipping out. And, we've got this kid that's been, introduced throughout and randomly coming in. It's because Captain Kintsugi is the problem with Dr. OM.
There you go.
Do I know that I'm right? No. Do I think I am? Yes. Let's talk about Captain Kintsugi. And there's really not much to say. I'm not sure what to think of the whole I'm dropping the captain thing, other than to say, like, he's just getting started. But there is a line here that is interesting.
Yeah.
He does say to Norman, "I want my life to count for something." And that is just not something I would expect a kid to say.
Sure.
Unless a kid is facing something
right.
That
final.
Makes them something final, right? And to me, like, that's the kind of line I think I would hear from a kid that makes you think he's like dying of cancer, or like knows that like their time is coming and their window that you might normally have 70 plus years to make meaning out of your life has been dramatically reduced. And so feels so compelled to leap into immediate action out of nowhere in this comic, and do something.
But maybe this is like Benjamin Button, and he just like, as time progresses, he loses honorifics. So, like, sorry. Anyway.
That's private Kintsugi to you. Yeah. That's hilarious.
He's Corporal Kintsugi now.
That's right. That's right. I don't know. Are you, I don't know if your brain went to any of those places, but
it didn't until you brought it up. But like, yeah, that makes sense. But we'll see what happens.
Even more weird to me is if you read the letters page, Nick Lowe didn't do the responses to the letters this week, and the letter pages have been controversial for a reason I don't even dare get into on this episode because it's so dumb. But in the sort of like bolded prelude from in this case, it's the associate editor Tommy Groneman who took over. Or Tommy G, as he writes in the letters page, he says that he's standing Norman Osborn and Dr. OM. And I'm not sure if we're meant to take that seriously.
Right.
But it's written in a way as if like, he's like, I'm standing them. And if anybody could make it happen, it's Joe Kelly. And I'm like, so are you saying that it's so improbable that Joe Kelly can make it happen, or that like legitimately that's what he's working towards? Because I did not pick up on any kind of like romance between
tension.
The two of them.
No.
There is the moment where she like looks back at him being sincere about his son. And I definitely know the whole trope of like, I think that guy's an asshole, but I come to love him,
right?
Kind of thing. And I just didn't know what to make of this. And I know I shouldn't be taking the letters page seriously, but it was so out of left field that I'm like, is he writing this joke based on knowledge that we don't have yet?
That's what we get. That's what we get the spoiler for, not like what's going on with your son.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Anyway.
All right. Aunt May. She's sad. I don't know what to say other than that, though. It's sad, May. At least we don't
I
have
mean,
like her gentleman caller being a dick to Peter this time, though.
yeah. I mean, it is nice, I guess, to know that the Riley family still exists somewhere out there.
Right.
I don't think we've ever met second cousin Gregory before. Like,
No.
I consulted my Riley family tree, and I don't think second cousin Gregory is someone we know.
No.
So I can assume Peter does not have that much of a close relationship with him, as is, I guess, implied here. I still find this story arc weird. I get what it's doing, like, and I think we have speculated as much that like whatever the resolution for the Hellgate thing is will be associated with May and him, Peter learning to rely on the other people in his life in some way by letting them in on his secret. And so we're going through the process of distancing May from Peter as much as possible, even against his will. And it was interesting to see Janine kind of like try to like safeguard Peter in some way.
Yeah.
But I still think it's weird that May, to have paced this the way it's been paced, given the conclusion of the first arc of this run, where like we spent all this time having this touching moment that brought the two of them together, only for May to just kind of accept that Peter would blow him off in this way and be like,
Yeah.
He doesn't have time for me because he's sleeping with a bunch of women, instead of thinking like, hey, wait, we had a real moment. And then he just disappeared. What's up with that?
Yeah.
Like, it seems fairly shallow that May would just go, oh, Lothario Peter is blowing me off, rather than maybe there's something deeply wrong with Peter that I should investigate on more than a surface level.
Right.
Am I overreading this, Mark?
No, I agree with that 100%.
Okay. All right, cool. Let's get to Brian Nearing, who kind of has a moment here, despite a lot of repetitive beats. Any thoughts about Brian?
Like you said, I mean, this isn't new ground. He's another one. Like when he was first introduced, I was really into this character, but like now it just kind of, seems to be like how we're going to just keep stringing this out and baiting us along for his inevitable turn. Like, we've seen that I think it was the second issue where you were like, okay, he's going to become like the Mushroom Man or something. I mean, like it's like
Yeah.
we're clearly going to go there, but like, it's, I feel like every issue it's just like, all right, when is he just going to do it? Like it's going to happen. So let's just, I don't want to rush it, but at the same time, I don't know what else we can do to make this seem any less inevitable, I guess. You know what I mean? Like it just, I don't know. Do you have a different read on it?
No, I don't. I mean, I think it could still swerve a different direction just because it seems so inevitable.
Right.
And I feel like Kelly is smart enough to not pitch something so straight down the plate. The thing that frustrates me about this storyline is that, like, I feel like the sort of dramatic weight of it has not been appropriately played out, because, like, we're told that Peter is driven and there to prove something.
Right.
But, like, we've also known that Peter has been, like, flaky and late to work. And so, like, those don't match up. So then the implication is that Ben has picked up the slack.
Sure.
And we got some of that in like that opening or like post Hellgate story where Ben is like blowing off being Spider-Man, and so the city is like falling into chaos and he's just kind of doing his own thing. But I've not seen the counter for Brian Nearing. Like, let's say, like, I'm just going to throw an example out. You have a scene where like they're in the lab and because Ben has nobody in his life other than Janine, he's like, I can stay here all night, but Brian has like a hot date. And so he's got to leave early and doesn't fully finish whatever culture he's working on. And therefore, like Brian is doing is having the sort of normal Spider-Man thing where he's like, I have a social life, so I'm trying to balance that with also being a worker, in a capitalist America. And Chasm Ben is like, I don't have to worry about that because I'm nobody, and I can just throw myself into the work. And you get a scene like the one at the beginning of this issue where Janine is like starting to get jealous of him and it is like, starting to suspect the sort of like, oh, you have a mistress, because you're never home anymore.
Right.
Why aren't you spending time with me? Both of those scenes would be enriched if we had seen the other scene I just described of like Ben being like, I don't have to care about anybody but myself, and I'm going to throw myself into science. And Brian being like, there are trade-offs to that. And now we're seeing the sort of like, development of that, but we didn't get that work. And so it feels hollow. Yeah. We're just being told that that's kind of the case.
Yeah. No pushback from me there. So
yeah,
good thing. All right. You got a grade on this thing?
I'm giving this one a C-. All
right. I was going to give it a C. I don't know if I actually liked it more than you did, but I guess that's where the grade fell. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like C is our solid average issue. And like, for me, like there's like a third of this book where the art just doesn't do much for me.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I'm probably going a little too low.
No. Stay with it. Stay with it. Don't you dare move. I'm
factoring in my dislike for Todd Nauck, which I hate to say because I know he's a nice guy. But I can't help not be intrigued by his artwork.
We are never going to get Todd Nauck on this show.
I know. I feel bad.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. But we want to thank you, the listeners and viewers, for tuning into this episode of The Amazing Spider Talk. This podcast exists because of the support of our listeners on Patreon, where for only $4.99 a month, the cost of a new comic, you can help support our show's existence while getting early episodes, including these reviews, the same week the comics release, as well as exclusive artwork and a ton of other bonuses.
Hey, and you know what? Not to lean into the thing I was alluding to with the letters page controversy, we went from me giving the previous issue an A+ to giving this issue a C-. So like anybody that thinks that you and I are like
in the bag,
in the bag, like I'm sorry, like the proof is in the pudding. So on that point, if you value smart, consistent comics criticism and historical analysis, we hope you'll consider supporting us on Patreon. What we do on this show is admittedly niche. Still, if you find our Spider-Man commentary and community valuable, we can only continue doing what we do with your support on Patreon. In response to my previous statement, cue all of the social media things that are saying, oh, Dan's just trying to throw us off his scent. Anyway, I'm not going to get into it. And here I am getting into it.
I was about to say, changing your grade with that kind of variance is exactly something someone who's trying to prove that they're not in the bag would do, Dan. But that's okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
There's a reason why.
Don't out my secret.
Yeah, there's a reason we got Joe Kelly on the show, right? It's all about that Marvel cash. Thank you to everyone who supports us and our work, but a special thanks to our newest Patreon members, Zan Preby, the 80s guy. Hey. I'm an 80s guy. Are you an 80s guy? Afri, Justin Cole, Finn Haverkamp, Christian Robertson, and Joseph Prefontaine. Oh, Prefontaine, that's a running name. Plus, an additional thank you to Tristan Matthews, who increased his patronage to become a member of our Excelsior Club. If you want to join their ranks, please go to AmazingSpiderTalk.com and click the Patreon button to sign up and join our club.
Yeah, thanks everybody that was a lot of new Patreon members this week. We really appreciate your support. I think people really loved that Joe Kelly interview, as did we, and we can't wait to bring you guys more content like that. So Mark, until we both order Croffles, what's our motto?
Dan, reading the script, I thought that said coffins at first. I was like, whoa. With great podcasts, I guess I'm dead. No. With great podcasts, there must also come the Amazing Spider Talk.